Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the DeJanVu podcast. If you're new, then make sure you watch the first one. But if you can't be bothered, then essentially it's a podcast where we've been tasked to talk about Croatia for the World Cup in Qatar. And as mentioned in the last one, we aren't actually Croatian, so the knowledge may be a bit out of touch, but hopefully we'll do it justice. And in this one, we're going to talk about the squad that got announced and the recent fixture, and then the up and coming fixtures as well for the World Cup. So, Michael, recent squad just got announced.
Yeah.
Not too many surprises, but
No.
what do we think?
I mean, it was obviously they had a friendly against Saudi Arabia 2 days ago, and I mean the lineup was, pretty much as expected. Yeah, they rested a few of the more key players like Perisic. Modric only played like 25 minutes, but I think looking at the team, the only real surprise for me is that Gvardiol didn't get any minutes on the pitch, and you'd think that would mean that he would play kind of a limited role. It looks like that Vida and Lovren will be the starters, or maybe Erlich. He played all 90 minutes in the friendly, but I think that Gvardiol he's the fourth choice, which I think is probably the only shock, considering he's been so good for Leipzig, especially in the last couple of seasons. But yeah, I think it looked good. Obviously, it's good that Kramaric got off the mark, even if it's just a friendly. I think that was the one thing we questioned in the last episode, was the kind of attack and threat of Croatia. So it's good that he's kind of in the mood for scoring goals going into the World Cup.
Yeah,
I think so. He's struggled this season for his club. I think he's only got 3 goals in 14 appearances this season, but he has been scoring for Croatia throughout this year through the Nations League, because they've obviously had an extremely successful Nations League. So he's their main guy, and playing Perisic looks like they're going to be playing Perisic as a wide forward, which obviously is quite the role change from this point in his career, being essentially a wing back for the last few years with Spurs and Inter prior. But I think you touched on it. It's a really good point. I think Gvardiol not being included in the friendly, I don't know if that means he won't be starting, but I think Lovren is definitely set. I think he will absolutely start. And whether they go with experience, which I would understand. Gvardiol's only 20.
Yeah.
And Vida and Lovren, that's been their staple for the last 3 or 4 tournaments. So in those big games, you want those level-headed at centre back. So I think you're right. I think as far as everything else wise, as far as selection, I don't think there's really anyone not selected that was particularly surprising, or who was selected. Obviously the fitness around Brozovic is going to be in question. He's not played 90 minutes since September, and that was for Croatia. So he's played minutes for Inter, but since the injury he played 65. So I think that was a good run out for him. So he's so integral to their control in midfield, and having legs. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds.
but touched on it earlier. Well, you just touched on it now, actually. Gvardiol only 20, so I can see what they've gone with the experience, but also he's starting, week in, week out for Leipzig, very big club. Obviously, a lot of big teams interested. I think at one point Chelsea were looking around at big figures to get him in. They've got a lot of clean sheets this season, Leipzig, with them at the back, including against Dortmund and Leverkusen, are doing quite well in their individual seasons as well. But it seems to be experience is the way for Croatia, which he had that for the last 3 or 4 tournaments. The squad, we kind of predicted a little bits about it. The midfield was never going to really be in question. I feel like the 3 in midfield was going to be Modric, Kovacic and Brozovic. You can't really bring any of them out because it's sort of the best they've got. Obviously, Modric, he's Modric really. He can't. He's the main man. We talked about it last one. Kovacic, he's a very good player, for Chelsea. Consistent. I mean, when he gets his game time, he's very consistent. And he's had praise at the highest from I remember it was Jose Mourinho had managed the teams that he's been at, Chelsea, Real Madrid, and whoever else. But he said that he's upset that he's never got to play with them. So I mean, when Jose Mourinho is saying that about you, you're somewhat of a good player. So yeah, should we might move on to maybe doing the predicted lineup to see what we've got? Have you boys got anything?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, go on.
Yeah, Michael, you go.
All right. Well, I'll kick us off. I mean, Lajkovic in goal. Obviously, it's pretty easy shout. I mean, I think Stanisic, he played the 90 minutes in friendly, so him at right back. I think Lovren and Vida will be the centre backs. Again, Basac at right back, he played 90 minutes, so put him in. Obviously, Brozovic, Kovacic and Modric in the midfield. It's pretty obvious, and I think it'll be Perisic, Kramaric, and Halasic as the front three. That'd be mine.
Stanley, what about you?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same. Again, I mean, they could throw somewhat of a curveball in there with, like you said, about playing Ehrlich instead of Vida, or Gvardiol could play. I mean, it really could be that. I mean, if one of those goes down, like Vida, I mean, Vida's pushing age now. He's not really much longer. But I think, other than that, I mean, I think the only question may be as far as Salic at right wing. Again, I think potentially Vlasic could go into that role, but But again, I don't think I think it will be based on who's in form at the moment. I know Salic is playing quite well for Atlanta, but I think the midfield I don't think that's the question. It's just going to be how fit is Brozovic. I think that's going to be the only question. And even Kovacic, because Kovacic he's struggled with injury a lot over the last 18 months. And like you're saying, it's one of the things about his inconsistency. It's not in his performance, really. It's in his actual availability. So that could be their downside. Other than that, I don't think there's really that much options for them to go any other direction, to be honest.
Yeah. I was looking at obviously the whole squad and the individual players and recent form and for the clubs. I sort of went a bit different, especially with the defence. I went at right back. I went with Juranovic from Celtic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been good for Celtic this year.
He's been good for Celtic. He's got a few. Got his goal and assist this season. He played. I think pretty sure he made an appearance in the Champions League and whatnot. But he's a good player, and I think I don't know. I went with this was before the friendly, so I mean this could be all wrong. I sort of went less experienced, more young, because I know we spoke about it last time with the World Cup being so quick. You've got a game, and you've got a 2 to 3 day break, and you've got another game. It's going to be tough, and I think you have to have a mix of the experience. So I can see them going.
You've got to make the most of your squad depth, don't you?
Yeah, exactly, and I can see them going with Gvardiol at centre back. We never know with the friendlies. Is it going to be that lineup, or is that just resting players that are going to play? But I've gone with Gvardiol at centre back. I can see them pairing him with a more experienced player. I went with Satalo from Dynamo. Only 22, so it's a very young defence. Got 18 clean sheets out of 28 games last season. But and again, I can see maybe one of them playing and then them putting in, Vida or a Lovren. And then I went with Sosa at left back. I mean, he's been playing left mid for Stuttgart, and he's versatile, and that means, they could always go to a 5-back with him being a wing back, and they've got Perisic who's been playing as a wing back as well. So, do they change the formation to suit their more experienced players like Perisic going into the 5-back? And then obviously the middle three is kind of, speaks for itself. It's the main three. And then Perisic, you've got to have him in, really, haven't you? Obviously, we spoke about it again. Stanley mentioned out of position this season. We're playing a different position anyway. And, hasn't hit the ground running, really, at Spurs. Got 4 assists.
Yeah.
And at the last World Cup, he was actually the joint top goal scorer for Croatia. So, with Mandzukic for Croatia. So, I think he'll definitely start. But it was Kramaric, wasn't it, in the friendly that started?
Yeah.
No,
he came off the bench.
No.
Kramaric
came off the bench. Yeah,
He came off the bench.
started.
Sorry, Pekovic started.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think Pekovic probably will start.
Yeah.
I can see that. He's done quite well for Dynamo with 8 goals and 4 assists this season. So maybe him, or they have got. I was looking into the attacking options. They've got quite a few players with decent records this season. Obviously, Pekovic, I just mentioned, and Orsic with 6 goals and 6 assists. He's more of a winger. Yeah. And then I may, butcher the pronunciation there, but I think it's Levija from plays Split. He's got 11 goals and 7 assists in 15 appearances. So they've got options. But yeah, I think maybe they will go with Pekovic if they started. Or does Kramaric get into that team now because of the goal he scored? And then
I think they would go Kramaric, like maybe just off the kind of more experience and kind of roles in tournaments. But it goes either way really. They do have those attacking options, so it's not like they're forced to start one player,
Yeah, no, I agree. They've got versatility, especially with someone like Orsic, who I think will make a lot of. I think he'll be their go-to, as in to try and change, especially if they're chasing a game, or even because he's got real pace and real quality. So I think in particular scenarios, he'd be perfect as far as counter-attacking or looking to stretch the opposition. But I think based off after looking at their Nation League games that they had this year, Kramaric was the main feature leading that front line, and he did quite well. He got a few goals. He was their leading goal scorer for the Nations League. So I do agree. I think, like you said, because of the quick turnaround between games, I think you'll see Pekovic start maybe 1 or 2 of the group games, and Kramaric, they'll have to sort of share that duty of leading the line.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, there's going to be rotation no matter what, especially like they've got the Belgium game last, and if they're like in trouble, they need a result in that game, then they're going to have to kind of switch things up.
And obviously the head coach Dalic has only had one big tournament before this. I'm pretty sure it was the last World Cup. Got into the final, so they've got the. We've mentioned before, they've got the experience. They've got to the final, and really, you've had that heartbreak now. There's nothing that stops you in any way. Then that's why we talk about the experiences, because they've done this now. They've got all the way. They've gone through all the stages, and they've had the heartbreak in the final. So if they get to that position again, it's really no fear, because what's the worst that it happens again? But you've done that before, so I think that in that position, I'm not saying they get to the final, but if it does happen, it's a good thing to have.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like the main players in this team, this is kind of their last chance in a way. Like for like Modric, Perisic, they're getting on. Like this is probably their last World Cup. I mean, I think it's definitely Modric's last World Cup.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
So obviously, the first game is Morocco, if I'm right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Morocco.
So that's some point next week. If we're going to go
Wednesday they play.
Wednesday
at 10.
If we're going to go just off that friendly and the squad that we've got, if we go for a prediction for the first game, Michael?
Ooh, I think 2-1 Croatia. I think Morocco have got a very good side, like a kind of deceptively good side, and so I think it's going to be a lot tougher game. Like if you look at it on paper, what people think it's going to be, I think Croatia will just have enough to push it out, especially like no one's. I don't know. I feel like Croatia, they've just got that experience, and kind of looking at the Morocco team, like there's no one with over 100 caps for Morocco in the the real team. They've not got that much experience. Like the most caps for like out of the players that most people would know is like Sace, the captain, with 65. So it's not so much experience, and I think that would be that I'm doing. So yeah, I'll go to
well, it's 100%. I mean, this crop of sort of young players, that this young pool of talent they've got. This is their first World Cup, so the experience factor, and I think they'll get undone, especially with playing in that heat.
Yeah.
Not having Croatia are just going to control the game, control the tempo with that midfield, especially.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really difficult, I think, later on for Morocco to keep up any sort of defensive intensity without the ball for that long. Because I don't think Morocco are going to have much of the ball. I really don't. I don't think they'll set up to have much of the ball either. I think you'll see a three at the back, basically with wing backs. Yeah. So I would say 2-0 Croatia. I think 2-0. Two late goals as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about obviously the heat, and this World Cup really could be something like we've never really seen before. We talk about the big teams, but really something, players aren't used to this sort of surroundings, or it's just a weird experience in general. So I think expect the unexpected really. But yeah, with Croatia, I think we mentioned before they can just hold onto the ball. They've got players that can just dominate possession. Obviously, Modric is a master of that. He's little passes and he's so good at that sort of thing. Yeah, I can see it maybe being a 1-0 again to Croatia, like the recent fixture. I'm going to go 1-0. Bit boring, but yeah, I think they need to, definitely with Belgium in the group, they need to get this. This is a crucial game for them. They need to get a win here. I think a good start will definitely do them good in the whole tournament. But yeah,
I mean, this is probably, like no kind of disrespect to Morocco, but I'd say this is, like on paper anyway, the easiest game in the group. So you don't want to go into Canada with only 1 point, and you really need a result there.
Yeah, you do.
It takes the pressure off, but obviously we spoke about the experience, but anything can happen.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where we're going to end it today. We've obviously spoken about the squad, predictions for the game, just a little bit more about the World Cup in general. We're going to hopefully get another one done just after the first game is played. So we can speak a bit more about that. We'll have a bit more of an idea about, where Croatia are going to go in this tournament. And yeah, hopefully that was somewhat enjoyable for the listeners. And my battery's gone. No, it's not. It's back. Yeah, somewhat enjoyable. And yeah, we'll be back to another one soon. So cheers for listening. Thank you very much.